Question will go to Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. Mary Margaret, please ask your question.
Thank you, Secretary Bessent. I wanted to ask if you could share what role Governor Tim Walz played in any of this, if any, and whether you have any indication that he won't seek re-election because of anything that you may have uncovered so far. Thank you.
I can't talk about ongoing investigations. It's clear that Governor Walz has been negligent in his fiduciary duties as the chief executive of the state of Minnesota, that this would happen on his watch, and we are actively pursuing all leads to see the level of involvement, whether it's limited to just negligence and incompetence or is something more than that.
Thank you. I see Fatima with the Associated Press has a question. Fatima, please ask your question.
Hi, thank you, Secretary Bessent, for taking questions on this issue. I have a question related to the task force. Does Treasury plan to work with the Justice Department on this new division for fraud enforcement that was announced yesterday? How are you working to ensure that some of these functions that are all being announced related to the fraud aren't duplicative?
Oh, well, I think the better question is, how did these things slip through the safety protocols, the financial safety protocols that we had in place? So if for a while we have duplicative processes that stop this and bring this to heel, because, and again, this is a larger scandal than Minnesota, then it is all hands on deck. Once we get the huge amount of fraud under control, then we can worry about streamlining the procedures. But as I said, President Trump has instructed several agencies in his administration, led by this new Assistant Attorney General, to end this fraud and recover funds for the American taxpayer.
Thank you. I see Claire Jones with the Financial Times has a question. Claire Jones, please ask your question.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to ask the question and for making time to do this today. You mentioned at the Economic Club of Minnesota yesterday that this is costing U.S. taxpayers $600 billion in fraud. What's your kind of baseline targets for how much you expect to recover with the sorts of measures that you've announced today? And do you have any sorts of timeline to really close this rather substantial gap in what the U.S. taxpayer ought to be receiving?
Well, again, because of the gross incompetence by the Walz administration and the lack of leadership, we are just putting all that together now. But as I just said to the previous question, all entities in the administration will be pursuing this so that we can get the biggest recoveries possible, and we will see. And we are going to leave no stone unturned, whether it was fraudulent real estate, whether it is money that has been wired overseas. We will be tracking it to the Middle East and East Africa. This is why Treasury is involved. This is what we do. We track, we follow the money, and we intend to follow it as much as we can, prosecute the individuals no matter where they are, whether they are in the Minnesota government or they are sitting in East Africa. We will find them.
Thank you. And I see Richard Escobedo with CBS has a question. Richard, please state your question.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for doing this morning. I have two questions. I'm wondering if you can explain or elaborate on whether or not you've found any evidence that indicates taxpayer dollars have flowed directly to terrorist organizations, and then I do have a follow-up after that.
Given the geographic proximity and the wires to East Africa, we are in the middle of investigations, and what we have found is highly concerning. I cannot talk about ongoing investigations, but think of absurdity of money being wired from Minnesota by these individuals that could have come from government programs or from excess benefits. This should not be wired out of the country, and we are going to be cracking down on that.
And then my second question is, you said on Fox last night that as a part of this geographical targeting order, the threshold for surveillance is being lowered to $3,000. Do you anticipate that will be lowered that will also be expanded into other states, that lowered threshold? Do you have any sense on what other states you anticipate having to do this in?
So we have lowered it's called a geographical targeting order, the GTOs. We have used lower thresholds to get at the cartels along the U.S.-Mexico border. And we view this crime as very similar to the cartel's money laundering, many of the same approaches, many of the same shell companies. So we will see where it goes out from here. That will be a starting point. And as I said, Minnesota is going to be the protocols, the procedures, and the investigative techniques, as well as the collaboration with other agencies. Minnesota is going to be the genesis for a national rollout.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like we have time for one more question, and that will go to Alana Austin with Newsmax.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, Secretary Bessent, for your time. I was wondering if there are any specific financial institutions that you think had lax practices that you're willing to name at this time. And also, I'm trying to understand if Somali government officials actually directed individuals from the country to come to Minnesota to exploit vulnerable systems, or whether you think that the bad actors were acting on their own.
So with the first question, as I said, we have targeted enhanced investigations for MSBs, money service businesses, in greater Minneapolis, St. Paul. As they are under investigation, I cannot name those businesses. We will make the details of the investigation available as they as we gather further information. And your last question is an excellent one, that we do not know the depth, breadth, and collusion in this financial calamity that Governor Walz has allowed to have happen. That was this directed from overseas? Is it an endogenous flourishing of these fraudsters that Governor Walz allowed to grow right here in the backyard and take advantage of hardworking people of Minnesota? We'll see. So we are going to track this everywhere from top to bottom, and we will get to the bottom of it. And as we have more details, we will make those available.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And that's all the time we have.